that whenever I think about a problem I have with anybody else, it's just a problem I have with myself. And that gave me a lot of time to think, a lot of time to sit, a lot of time to get angry, a lot of time to not talk to anybody. And when you fester with your own thoughts, you really give yourself a lot of excuses to believe them.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the Schooling Struggle podcast. It is our belief that the only guarantee in life is that we are all going to struggle, and how we choose to embrace our struggles is what empowers us to become the best versions of ourselves. How's it going? My name is Pete, coming to you from my basement in Heartland, Vermont. My friend and co-host Todd Ellis is still out touring the Midwest, visiting friends, families, mountain lakes, fishing, whatever it is that Todd does. And I'm super, super pumped about tonight's conversation. This is a conversation that I knew was going to be in the works right around episode 1. And here we are in episode 65. And we can finally make it happen as we do our tour of former students and alumni. I'm super excited to introduce tonight's guest. Her name is Rory Salzano. I have known Rory for a long time. Before we get into our backstory, I'd like to welcome Rory to the show. What's up, Rory?
Hi. Oh my
How's it
gosh,
going?
this is so exciting.
What I like to lead off with is, what would you like the listeners to know about you to set a little background or context for whatever it is we chat about tonight?
Gosh. All right. I'm 18. I just graduated Hartford High School. I live in Heartland, same town as Mr. D. I love it here, actually, wholeheartedly. It's a great place to grow up, seriously.
Heartland with no E, Hartland.
I have 2 siblings. I have 2 twin sisters that just turned 22 back in July. I've got a really awesome single mom named Karen. I work 2 jobs. I was the program coordinator of a food distribution nonprofit this summer, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, I worked at a diner that I've worked at since I was 14, the Heartland Diner.
By the true definition of the word, Rory and I truly are homies. We are from the same hometown. When I first met Rory, Karen walked into the school to drop something off at the school for her twin daughters. And Rory, who was in preschool at the time, came bursting into the school and put her arms out like an airplane and went buzzing around the gym while her mother and I were having a brief conversation. And she was just running laps around the gym with a giant smile on her face. And I said to her mom, "Who's this?" And she said, "Oh, that's my youngest. That's Rory. She is 5 going on 16. You're going to get to know her very, very well." And Karen, you couldn't have been more right. Rory and I forged an incredibly deep relationship over the time that I taught her. Karen would drop her off at Jen and I's house during summers. For the better part of the last decade, Jen and I have been hosting friends and family a couple days a week for CrossFit workouts out of our garage. But I think, well, you'd have to confirm this, but I think against Rory's will, at 8 in the morning, her mom would drop her off and I'd stumble out of the garage, ready to start the workout, and Rory would be just sitting there waiting, ready to go. So Rory and I worked out together when she was around 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and then I went over to high school. And when Rory came to the high school, her mother requested that I be her advisor. And at Hartford High School, a student's advisor is part mentor, part close contact in the school, part counselor, part just whatever you need, you go to this person. And we get together every day, almost like a homeroom type setup. And the student has the same advisor, if everything goes well, for all 4 years. And Rory requested that I not be her advisor for whatever reason. And her mom suggested that I was her advisor. So against her will, I became her advisor. And this is going into my 18th year of teaching. In 3 days, I go back to school. And I can say with absolute and utter certainty that I have had more deep and meaningful conversations with Rory than I have with any student that I've ever taught. And it'll be a miracle if I can get through this conversation without shedding some kind of tears or getting emotional. I have seen Rory grow and change over time, and she has a really cool story that I think is an awesome one for people to hear. And my theme for Rory is, I see that you are an amazing human being, and I want the world to see what I see. So we've had many a deep, many a tough, many a tearful conversations over many years, and I've seen this human being grow and progress and learn from her mistakes and continue to navigate the struggle that is presented in her life. And I'm just thrilled to have your time, have your attention, to carve out 45 minutes to have a chat tonight. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, Of course, there's no way I could say no to this. I've been waiting.
You were one of the first people to listen to the first episode. And you're like, "Yo, Mr. D, the podcast is really cool." I was like, "Well, when you graduate, you're
Yeah.
coming on." So,
I'm glad
yeah,
we made it happen.
yeah. So, is there anywhere in particular that you'd like to start, or do you want me to lead off the conversation? Rory and I were talking before I hit record, and the truth of the matter is, I normally have each episode prepared with notes, with quotes, with things that I fall back on from books and other bits of information. And for this, it's just I have nothing prepared. It's just a free flowing conversation between Rory and I because I want this to go wherever she wants it to go, and I have no idea where it's going to go, and I'm crazy excited about that.
Me too. I think the biggest thing is that a big backstory is that I was really not always super happy, super nice, super let's sit down and actually have a talk about something. There was a good 3, 4 long years where stay out of sight. There was there was no shot in getting a sincere and meaningful conversation out of me for like the longest time.
Yeah, when you say the longest time, what years of your life would you say that those
Ooh, middle
3-ish
school.
years were?
Yep, 6th
Sixth,
through 8th.
seventh, eighth grade.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. Because I
Just the
think
most brutal time.
that summer going into sixth grade was probably the last time you came to CrossFit with us.
Yep.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it ended then. We stopped like I stopped my, workouts with you and everything, and then you moved on. You did your own cool little thing, and then I eventually caught up to you.
What Rory is referring to with me doing my thing is I left the school that she was at the time and moved on to high school, and she navigated her middle school years at the time that I wasn't there, and then we reconnected when she came to the high school that I was teaching at.
After that, boy, did Heartland go a little bit downhill from there. Just a little. Well, just my life at
So,
Heartland.
so
Yeah.
do you want to start there?
Yeah, why not? I think it's so crucial to the way that I look at life now. And I think the biggest factor for me in realizing how important my thoughts are and how important others are is at one point I didn't care about any of that. And that was, I think that's just like the usual, we're all going through it in our preteens, teens, young age, that's tough. I mean, I've struggled with my mental health and I'm so open and willing to talk about that. And so I think that that definitely played a massive role in it. But I think that what also played another massive role is that just the absence of some figures in my life and navigating that. And I think that a big thing that I wanted was just a lot of control and learning that control is having no control sometimes and that you got to just relax a little sometimes.
So, are you cool if we dig back into some specifics?
Oh,
Getting into that?
absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So, Rory has listened to enough of this podcast to know what the theme of it is, and our really dedicated family of listeners is very familiar with Todd and I saying that really navigating our struggle makes us who we are. I lead off every episode by saying the only guarantee in life is that we're all going to struggle, and what I think is your strength, Rory, is you've had a large number of struggles that have been thrust on you and that you've also brought on yourself over the course of your time, and how you have navigated them, especially in the last couple years, has really blown my mind because your challenge has been immense, and the way that you accept who you are and focus on what it is that you can control. And obviously we all have slip ups and we all have challenges with that, but where you've grown in those areas has really blown me away. So I'd like to take the listeners back. So kindergarten through fourth seemed to go pretty well. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And
was just
and
that loud, annoying kid. Like, I was just getting in trouble for just talking too much.
and then before we kind of dive into where the
Hmm.
challenges started in middle school, what would you say? Do you want to talk about like your lifestyle dynamic or your family dynamic that kind
Yeah,
of might
absolutely.
have led into that?
Sure. I think a big thing was my dad left pretty early on. About as soon as I popped out of the womb, he was out of there for me at least, and then the next coming years was me deciding to not have him be a part of it, even at such young of an age. And so I think the family dynamic there of it was just me and my sisters at our house together, playing, learning, figuring each other out, while also I guess, taking on somewhat of a parental role in a sense that we're all taking care of each other. And so then that translated over really hugely with my friends. I took on that caretaker role in our friend group from, such a young age is that, anybody has a problem, somebody comes to Rory. You want to talk, you come to Rory. So I built a really steady friend group from such a young age, being that person that people could rely on or talk to about things. But I also think that a big part of it was I wasn't afraid to talk to anybody. Since we didn't have anybody, I always wanted to talk.
So when you say you didn't have anyone, what you're referring to is your father really wasn't around for any part of your life.
Oh,
Right,
no.
right when you were born.
Yep.
Physically, was he in the area or did he peace out and go somewhere?
Sometimes. It really depends. He'd couch surf, but also there was a really long time where he'd work in like Killington or Rutland at one of the ski mountains or a ski shop or something over there. And, he'd come back like every other weekend.
That's about
But
an hour from here for reference for listeners. But at least from my outside perspective, it didn't look like you had a relationship with him or the two of you
no, none.
weren't close. Is that an
No.
accurate statement?
Yeah, no, I know very little about him besides what you can tell from observing him.
What do you mean by that?
Like I know that he's an old guy that's no longer alive and that he, was a free hippie loving Vermonter, but besides that, I didn't know anything about him, nothing about who he was, his values, what he
Oh, okay.
cherished, what his
So what I'm
hobbies
hearing you
were.
say is you don't know anything that he would have told you about himself.
Yep.
What you've
Yep.
learned is kind of from the outside looking in.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So you and your mother and your two sisters kind of had to hunker down
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and kind of face life, the four of you together
Yeah.
in a pretty non-traditional family approach to life,
Yeah,
pretty much.
extremely so. Because my mom was extremely honest with us growing up from such a young age. I mean, I remember from the first time that like they were truly, really separated. And my parents were never married; they were just together. And um, she decided that you get to have the facts. The sooner you have the facts, the less you feel like somebody wasn't telling you the whole truth growing up. I mean, it's a shocking and abrupt thing if you're, 10, 12 years old and here now somebody's telling you that, oh, you have this really crappy parental figure that you didn't know about and somebody had already been making excuses for. And I think that was a really big thing, is that my mom was never going to make excuses for another person's actions that she had nothing to do with.
So it's the four of you kind of making your way through life, and things go well early on in elementary school. And then what switched in the middle school years, where when you say things kind of went off the rails or things got difficult, in what capacity are you referring to?
Um, I really, when I sit down and think about it, so I've done a lot of therapy, right? And from what I've boiled down over my couple of years of working on it, is that your middle school years have a few crucial points. There's not just one turning point for me. There's the social media factor that played a huge role for me and my self-awareness, my self-confidence, but there was also the clinical depression that I was diagnosed with, which was nothing but a chemical deficit. So, just happened to be me. And then the next part was I had a sister who was also going through it at this point, and that played a very large role on me in her life and how she was navigating that. Because
So
at this time, yeah.
you two were diagnosed with this similar or the same thing?
Oh my gosh, no. No, 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 no. So
Okay.
Cade, I'm talking about Cade. When Cade went to Hanover, right? Hanover is such a massive transition for her, right? And
Okay. So,
you're
at that
coming,
time, she left for high school.
yeah,
So Rory's two sisters are Cade and Sage. And right now you're talking about Cade.
yep. And so Cade went off to Hanover High School because Heartland has choice. And for people who don't know, that's demographically a very wealthy town, a very wealthy school. And that is not what Heartland is, to an extent, of course. And I think a big thing that happened was that was really abrupt for her. And one way that she could really handle that was coming home with that. And as the scapegoat of the family that I've learned that, it was super easy for her to, take those things out on me. And that's no
Gotcha.
bashing her. We're learning at such a young age. I mean, that's just how it goes. Why would she know? And I think that those three things played a really big factor in it. And it was like this perfect little concoction for me and my like young prepubescent brain in such a small, isolated place. And I think that I really just let that fester, specifically because I was alone for about 5 hours a day after school.
Mom
I'd
was
come
working.
home. Yeah, mom was working. Sage would, get dropped off at my grandma's house in Heartland. And Cade would be working after school or sports or hanging with friends or something. She was not. She'd get home later. And that gave me a lot of time to think, a lot of time to sit, a lot of time to get angry, a lot of time to not talk to anybody. And when you fester with your own thoughts, you really give yourself a lot of excuses to believe them. And so I think that's where it really rooted.
One of my friends that is in the process of overcoming different types of addiction. His saying is, idle time is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say right there reminded me of that. Just to give a little context for the listeners, what Rory's referring to as Heartland as choice, it's rare in Vermont, but it does occur in certain towns where there's no high school because the town's so small, and the students or the families can choose which high school they want to go to, and then they go to those high schools. So the town that I live in, and where my daughter, when she graduates 8th grade, she's going to have choice as to which high school in the area she wants to go to. And 99% of the kids go to 6 different schools in the area. There's some outliers here and there, but the high school that Cade went to, that Rory's referring to, is more one of the more affluent towns, and that is what Rory's referring to with that.
Yeah. So I think that that large transition for her and this large transition for me of just me coming into myself, figuring out who I am more, understanding what I wanted in life, what made me feel good, what didn't make me feel good, and not understanding how to categorize that or even come across it or think about it in a way that was, hey, just because I'm feeling this doesn't mean that like I have to fix it. You can just sit with that feeling. And so I think I really wasn't okay with sitting with my feelings then, and that caused it a lot of outrage and a lot of backlash and a lot of hurting other people that was just completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I'd heard like teachers or peers that you were in good relations with when I left. It didn't always stay that way with certain people, and I was always kind
Oh
of
goodness, no.
curious about what was the foundation for that, or what was the manifestation of that. So
Hmm.
were you just pissed off at the world at that
They
time in your life?
cared. They cared.
So
And
anyone
I
that cared got pushed away.
Yep. Yep. So, some of it, definitely was overstepping. There was a couple teachers there that, they try and they're helping and they try and help, but the way that they do it is overstepping your boundaries, even if I didn't know what they were at that point. So, some of them I think are completely justifiable, but I think that a lot of them was I wasn't ready. And I think that's a really big thing is that it's really hard to help somebody and it's really hard to try and feel like you're doing the right thing and the most that you can when the other individual isn't ready to have any sort of type of healing or help. And that's nobody's fault. That's just time. And it just was not my time then. And I think that I needed to get my butt handed to me that first month of freshman year. And that really leveled me out for sure.
Huh. Yeah. So going back to my multiple friends,
Yeah.
they're dealing with different types of addictions. We even kind of tried to circle the wagons and try to help them out. And the realization that I've come to is you cannot help someone that doesn't want to be helped, especially adults. Kids, different conversation. But if someone doesn't want to be helped, it's really difficult. And then when you want to be the solution guy, the helper, it's really, really hard. So you had people that were trying to help you, you're pushing them away,
Mm-hmm.
and you needed just a change of environment, or
I
a
think
new.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Because Heartland's so small, right? It's 40 kids to a class. You're in the same wing with half the school. You know every teacher there and everything.
I
Everyone's
think
backstory.
by the time you graduate from that place, if you've been there since kindergarten, which you were, your classmates are more like brothers and sisters than like
Oh,
classmates, because the
completely.
classes are so small.
Right? I mean, they came to Thanksgiving, they came to Christmas. It's that type of situation with those fellow classmates. So absolutely.
So
It
you
was a
go
weird environment for sure.
so you go to high school,
Yeah.
and what happened? I actually don't know this. I don't think we've talked about the first
Oh,
month of high
never.
school.
Never. No, I never talked about it. It happened, I got talked about, and then I dropped it. I dropped it. There was no way I was bringing anything up. So, freshman in high school, I was, what, 14 at the time? Because
Yep.
I turned 15 in November. Um, I came in there and I thought the best thing to do was to let everybody know that I was not some girl who had never talked to a boy in her life, right? Because that's what I thought everybody cared about was that, oh, she has to have had a boyfriend before. She's had to talk to anybody, right? I thought like the only way popularity would come to me was if I had had a significant other in my life before or something of the sorts. So I told people that I had had like 6 boyfriends before, right? You know, I'd
I have
come up
not heard this.
Oh, I know, because it's awful. I had come up with immaculate stories for all of them, and I got found out. And so it was like the first 2 weeks of school, so nobody really cared. Nobody knew who I was. Everybody just knew coming in that I was bitchy because I was coming in with this class when okay, we gotta take it back to 8th grade a little bit. So in 8th grade, I was really, really, really awful to this one girl. And coming into Hartford, they were already friends with a couple of Hartford kids, and word spreads. And I had come in with this reputation of being just like so bitchy. But then I came in with this really bubbly, nice attitude because, like, I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to
Were
talk
you
to
trying to kind of
people.
start over, like
Yeah,
clean
absolutely.
slate? Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, there's 20 kids from my class that are going there out of 120.
Yep.
Like, my odds are pretty good. And so I come in there, I've already got this little bit of a reputation, and on top of that, now I've built this next reputation that at such a young age, oh, she's had 6 boyfriends. That's a little odd. But to me, I didn't think that was odd. I thought that that was what made me cool.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of built, and everybody was like, no, that's really, really, really weird. And they didn't use that language. But
Thank you. I asked her to keep it clean before we came on, so I appreciate your effort, Roar. I really do.
yeah. Um it was a lot more vulgar than that, and it was a
Uh,
lot meaner, and it was a lot more direct and misogynistic and really crappy. And nobody ever talked about it after like the first month, which I was so grateful for. But after that, it was no nonsense, no BS. You're just going to be Rory, and if they don't like it, they don't like it. Granted, I fibbed a little along the way, of course, but I tried to really stay true to myself after that.
yeah, that's something that I really do believe sets you apart from the majority of people your age. And when I say people your age, I'm talking about those 4 pivotal years in high school, age 14 to 18. Staying true to yourself in a number of ways. And I think that got you in hot water more than
Yeah.
once. And oftentimes, and this is the focus of the conversations that we had often, was it's okay to be enraged. How you respond or react to your rage matters. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, I know you'd be the first to admit that many of the times that you responded to your rage or your frustrations, taking it to social media or taking shots individually at people in ways that you might not have been super beneficial for either you or the person, it was some of the kind of the missteps that you made along the way. And it's interesting when I think about certain, if kids in the school are like, well, why is Mr. D bringing Rory on? Like, she had this outburst, or she said this about me at one point, or she said that about me. And that is all true. And I know that you wouldn't back away from taking accountability for any of that. But what I see in you is a person that says, yep, I screwed up. Yep, I handled my rage inappropriately. But I'm still going to continue to strive to be better and to learn to be better and just take one step at a time. And the growth that you've made from that first week of high school to your last week of high school is like nothing I've seen from past students. It's just where you were so far down in so many ways, physically, emotionally, socially, all those places, and where you were when you left. And I know that you weren't best friends with everyone in the school by the time you left, but they knew where you stood in the issues that were important to you.
Hmm.
And I think one of my weaknesses is I won't always stand up for what I think should be said in the moment because I want to be a harmony guy. And
Hmm.
quite frankly, I want to be liked. And
Hmm.
rocking the boat is not a way to always reach
Hmm.
those two things. But
Yeah.
you've said, I'm okay rocking the boat. I'm okay disrupting the
Yeah.
harmony because this is what I believe. This is who I am. And sometimes, in my opinion, you've overstepped with how you've responded.
Hmm.
But we've talked about it. And sometimes you said, Mr. D, I think you're right. And I'm going to work to be better. And sometimes you've said, I am who I am. And that's how I'm going to respond the next time it happens too. And
Yeah.
that's just something I really, really admire about you.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I've been trying to realize, and that I think that I've really come to terms with since my last mishap in the last school. Well, I'd never really got in trouble at Hartford, but besides like my last suspension, well, my senior year, that little mishap, and I'd really been thinking about that one. I posted something mean to social media that I didn't need to. That got my butt bit a little bit. And since then, I've really been thinking that, because I want to be honest and I want to be true to myself, and I don't like when things happen and I want to speak out about it. But I think that one thing I've really been thinking about this summer is that honesty doesn't have to always come in the moment. I can be honest, I can be true to myself, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be said right then and there. That doesn't mean it needs to happen, right there. And I think that's something that while you were speaking, I was really resonating with and thinking about, is how you are true to yourself and you do keep it honest and you do like harmony. But at the same time, I think that just means you really know how to read a room and you know when that honesty needs to come, because you're willing to pull somebody aside when the time's right and really have that conversation with them. And I think that that's something that I'm striving to work towards more, is understanding who this person is, how can I work with them and get the best result needed? Because we've had that conversation a lot, right? Is that I can react as much as I want, but a reaction doesn't do anything without their comprehension of the situation. They
Yeah.
really need to understand it, and I need to figure out a way to make them understand that without just satisfying my need to say my part and say, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that I've been working on for many years now, and where I've made some progress, but I still have a long way to go, is with emotional intelligence and really trying to understand a person, and how I interact with that person
Yeah.
is unique and in a case by case basis. Everybody communicates differently, and trying to figure out the best mode for each person. And in a school setting where there's, I'm interacting with 400 kids in a
Yeah.
day. What do
Yeah.
I know about this kid's backstory, and what do they need right now?
Hmm.
And that's just a life skill that I think that it would be beneficial if we all worked on.
Yeah. I'm trying to learn. I think I might get there. I mean, I think about when I was really mean to that one girl, right? And how I didn't approach her the first 2 weeks that she was back to apologize or do anything, right? I waited because I understood that like she had so much resentment against me, as she should, and as she should always have, in my opinion. I mean, I think you should keep your walls up a bit, but I think that was the first time that I had realized that it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about me getting to apologize, and it wasn't about me getting to feel some satisfaction or like I did the right thing or I made amends and that I get to not have that feeling anymore. No, sit in it. You did that. So let's feel it out. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean we just get to move on from it. That just means we get to learn from it. And so I think taking that time during then is also like a really pivotal thing for me. It was when I finally got to apologize to her and we finally got to hang out after, because we were friends in 8th grade before I started being mean to her. And then we got back to that point and I kept that relationship and I perpetuated who I was and who I said I was going to be for the next 4 years to ultimately show, like, hey, I'm not about that anymore. And like, I really want you to feel secure and safe when I say something and when I say I'm sorry and when I say that I'm not going to do something like that again and that I apologize for my past actions. And I think that keeping that momentum with everybody around me made it a lot easier, but it also makes it a really, really lonely. Just because you're super honest and nice and you're true to yourself, like, doesn't mean it's a good time.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a bunch of ways we can go with this, with that lead that you just dropped right there. I see you as someone who holds people around them accountable, and examples of that are you're the only student who calls me out when I self-deprecate. So if I'm in a group of students and kind of poke fun at myself for any of my shortcomings, Rory, in front of the students, to be like, Mr. D, you don't need to do that. Like, you don't need to say that negative thing about you. Or when the class is over and all the kids walk out, she's like, yo, you didn't need to say that about yourself. Like, you can be better than that. And I was like, she calls me out on my BS, and I challenge students to be better versions of themselves, and you challenge me to be a better version of myself, which is really cool. And all this to say, I find that oftentimes, me included, people don't want to be held accountable. It's this really interesting thing as a the quote unquote fitness guy, the nutrition guy, how many people come up to me in a day and are very excited to share with me, hey, guess what? Last night before I went to bed, I did 100 push-ups. Or, hey, guess what? Instead of drinking 3 cans of soda yesterday, I only drank 2. Like, they're really excited to share. And I do feel that, and I don't want to carry myself this way, but I do feel that some people see me as kind of like an accountability guy, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's unrelatable. So
Hmm.
um, I people aren't always comfortable around people that hold them accountable, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
you hold people accountable in many ways, or at least that's how I see you. And it's easy to say, well, she's a bitch because
Yeah.
blah 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 blah. But it's really, is she, or is she just maybe not the way you want, but
Yeah.
asking your group of friends to be
Hmm.
accountable for what you're saying and doing, and that
Yeah.
and when you hold other people accountable, it can be a lonely road.
Very. Yeah. And I think that, especially at this age, right? I'm dealing with 500 other kids that are emotionally immature and haven't figured out themselves, haven't begun to, don't know what that journey looks like, or maybe they're at the end of it and I just never found them. And I think one of the biggest things about that is, if you're gonna hold yourself accountable and hold other people accountable, like, you have to be willing to branch out. And I think that I really missed that opportunity. Like this last year when I had, because my past senior year, I had really come into myself, I feel like, and I had really cut off a bunch of people in my life that I felt like were dragging me down or weren't doing anything for me, or I just didn't want to be involved with or associated with, anything along those lines. And I remember our salutatorian texted me the night before our graduation and was like, "What's one thing that you wish you had done in high school that you didn't?" And mine was give people a chance that I never even thought of. And I felt like I had such a lonely year and that I had nobody. But there are so many other people that were feeling like that I just never gave the chance to even think about or talk to, or somebody that I had only ever had friendly conversations with. And so I think a big thing with wanting to find that perfect match, because accountability, I think for me, and the way it was, is that I really want to surround myself with good people in my life. And the way that I can do that is I really admire individuals who take accountability for their actions and can say, hey, I did this. Hey, I didn't do this. Let's grow from it. Let's learn from it. And one of those things is that you have to be open that it's going to be a lonely road, but that doesn't mean that you get to stop trying. And I think that's where I lost that a little bit, was that I just expected that, gosh, well, none of my friends worked out, so I guess everybody here is just no good. And it's going to be a lonely year, and that it's just me, and that nobody gets me in the world, and that it's always going to be like this. But it's really
Hmm.
not. It's really, really not. And I'll probably be able to speak on this more later when I actually head to college in 3 days. But for right now, living in a very small town, it's really tough to find those people. But I think that one thing I'm really trying to understand before I go anywhere in my life further trying to make connections is that I still need to try and I still need to put in that effort. And just because somebody doesn't match something immediately, or a group doesn't, that doesn't mean that I get to give up or not, I guess, isolate myself. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
My wife and I were talking today. She's coaching a running club that my daughter's going to be in the fall, and she had to do a webinar today. And the webinar referred to this study called the Positivity Study, and apparently it was launched by a couple students at West Point, and they did a bunch of research and they found out a bunch of stuff. And then I guess a class either at that college or another college was started, and the name of the class was the Positivity Study. And the professor stood up on the first day and he's like, listen, he's like, for the next however many months, I'm going to talk to you about what we've learned from the study and how we can be. It was basically like, how can you feel more positive about yourself, about your world, about your life? And then like, where does that come from? And how can you get there? And the professor said, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff in the next bunch of months, but all that really matters is the 3 words I'm about to say to you. And this whole entire course boils down, and this whole study boils down to these 3 words: other people matter. And the more that we can invest in other people, the better we feel about ourselves. Our serotonin picks up. All these like scientific things happen with our body and our physiology and our psychology that makes us feel like we're better people. Versus if we're just focused on ourselves and what we want and what we need, it's hard to hit those higher levels of fulfillment and happiness. And it's really oxymoronic in some ways, or I don't know if that's the right word, but it's really a dichotomy, because you often hear, well, you got to work on yourself before you can help others, but oftentimes helping others helps ourselves. And
Yeah.
what I've seen from you is someone who, and I hate to use this word, but I think there was tendencies of you that were quite selfish coming up out of middle school to now. And I know you've talked about your love languages and how one of the ways that you express what you want to express is through caring for others.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of segues to another conversation that I was wondering if you'd be willing to embark on tonight.
Hmm.
And that is with your sister, Sage. Because I think
Yes.
a
Oh, I
lot of
love
your
talking
thoughts and
about Sage.
perspectives on the world
Hmm.
come through the paradigm of I'm a sister of, or I'm a sibling of someone that has very particular needs.
Yeah.
And I think that has shaped who you are as well. And it's shaped a lot of your stances and your perspectives on your willingness to help others. An example of that is at our school, Hartford High School, we have an organization called the Unified Basketball. And Unified Basketball is a combination of, I, I, I don't want to use the wrong words. What are the words that they use for the players? Is there,
Players. So they're players. We're helpers.
okay, so why don't you just explain it,
Okay.
because you'll do a better job than
So
I will.
unified basketball is kids with disabilities or special needs. And then along with that team, so for unified basketball specifically, there's 3 players on the court, which is an individual that in some, they do have to qualify to be able to go onto that team. They need to have certain requirements. And then whoever wants to sign up can sign up, and then you have two helpers that are helping the game just go along. So they play, we just get the ball and keep it going.
So Rory, who's never played a lick of basketball in her life. Well, you played back into like third and
I
fourth
played
grade.
1 year for Jen, 1 year for Jen,
My
and that was
wife.
it.
Okay, you played for my wife 1 year in middle school, but with no basketball background, you're like, "Yep, I'm going to go do this thing." And
Yeah.
Unified at our school is kind of a big thing. Like
Oh
at
yeah.
the end of the day, students can not go to class and go watch the Unified game, and it's
Yeah.
a bunch of students with all sorts of needs, kind of across the board, that
Hmm.
form a basketball team and play against other schools whose students represent their programs with disabilities, and then the helpers are from the general populace of the school, and they're on the court. They don't shoot; they just pass
Yep.
to the players, and the players do it. And you were one of very few kids at our school that volunteered to do this,
Yeah.
and watching you out on that court was just so cool. And you had to go to all the practices, and you had to travel with the team on the buses, and not that you had to, you got to, right?
I did. I really
Go to the
got to.
parties and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the school year, that group went and did some really cool stuff, went to a bocce tournament, all these different things. And it was just really inspirational for me to see. I mean, the Unified, it just goes off. It is
Oh
amazing.
my god, it's
But
so fun.
to see you out there with them, and I think that's just one example of your willingness to kind of go down that road because of your lifestyle or your experience in being in the same household with your sister.
Yeah. Yeah. So I care a lot about anything to do with that. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I think a really big thing for me and not judging other people is Sage. And Sage is my older sister who has epilepsy, which has caused her to be cognitively delayed. She's 22. The last time she was tested, it was about, I think it was sixth or seventh grade level. Um, and that's rudimentary, basic sixth, seventh grade. Not we're not talking emotional intelligence.
So you're saying her executive functioning skills at the age of 22 are the equivalent of that, or as that of a sixth or seventh grader? Yeah.
Yep. But she's extremely emotionally intelligent. There's just a processing delay. So when you speak to her, or when you talk to her about certain situations, you got to expect that it's going to be sometimes 5-10 minutes. It can be up to 21 minutes is her max. So you can say something to her, and 21 minutes later, she'll respond. Sometimes that's the max. That's when there's a lot of seizure activity going on in her brain. There's a lot of cluster. Um, well, I guess we'll start when we were really young because I wasn't always like this with Sage, and I really wasn't always extremely supportive or caring towards her or accepting in any sense. I think one thing that I really try and remember is that you're consistently grieving an individual that could be. And so one thing was that is that it's okay to be frustrated and it's okay to not get it.
What do you mean by that could be?
You're right. That did sound funny when I said it. So the way that me and my mom have talked about it with her physicians is that it's okay to be really upset that she's not going to get something or that, you're going to have to deal with this the rest of your life. And it's not that you resent her in any way. It's that you're grieving a life you could have had also, right? Because it's not
Oh,
that my mom chose or that we chose to have Sage under these circumstances and to now have to do these extra precautionary things to care for her, right?
so when you say grieving a life that could be, like, are you saying that it could have been you, or you're grieving the fact that this is happening and it could have been quote unquote normal otherwise?
The latter, yeah. So
Okay.
like
Okay.
Sage could have had a more normal life than what she's
Gotcha.
going
Okay.
to.
Yep.
Um, and so one of those things is that I didn't really get that growing up, and I didn't understand how to sympathize with that, and I didn't understand, which is very normal. I mean, we were both children. It's really hard to understand your emotional intelligence and then trying to understand another individual's where theirs is not going to be on the same level, and it's not going to have the same growth pattern as yours, and it's not going to look the same. And I think as I grew up, right, you can always be mean to your siblings, but nobody else can. And so that was very normal, us picking on each other and everything until about the time when I had hit middle school, right? And I was going through my rough period also. And Sage and my mom were just my beating bag. And
Mm.
I took it out on them the most because, well, they were here. Kate was off doing her own thing, living her high school years, doing whatever. And a big thing was that Sage was not, in my eyes, normal. And therefore, that gave me every reason and every excuse to be angry or mad at her or frustrated that she didn't get something. And it's not even that she'd necessarily do something, it's that she'd ask me about my day and I'd be pissed off and I'd be like, why don't you get that I don't want you to speak to me right now? But of course, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just sitting in my room silently. She's not going to read my head. And so I think a big thing with that is also patience coming with that, is because when you're dealing with somebody with disabilities or special needs, there's a lot of patience that plays into that factor, because it's not going to go the way that you want it to go. They're not always going to get it the way that you want it to get it. And there's nothing you can do about it but try and redirect the situation or find another way that works for it, right? And one thing that made me and Sage a lot closer was when Sage stopped going to Hartford High School, right? Because I came in the year that Sage left. So we were never in the building at the same time, which I was a little thankful for. I think she would have stole some of my shine there, for sure.
I also had Sage in advisory, and Sage and I have been very close since day one. And it's good that as she was leaving, you were coming in, because you never would have been in the same advisory together.
Oh, never.
So you and I probably wouldn't have paired up anyway.
Yeah. No, thankful for it. But I think one of the things is that Sage had started to come. She went to my grandma's house every day after school because that's where the bus would drop her off. And then she started coming home, and I would come home after school. And so we would actually start to hang out and we would talk. And at this time, she was doing this thing called Project Search, which works with individuals with disabilities and puts them into real life jobs and situations in the Upper Valley and provides them with job experiences and resume builders, right? And so she was working for food distribution at Dartmouth in the she'd go and serve trays. And that was
Dartmouth
Hitchcock
Hospital.
Middle. Yeah.
Yeah, people that aren't from around here, they hear Dartmouth and they think of the college.
Oh,
but
you're
when
right.
we refer to Dartmouth, it's usually the hospital.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's working in the hospital.
Yep. So she's at DHMC and she's doing that, which is it's a little bit of a stressful job for sure. I mean, I have no clue about it. I mean, you're running couple hundred trays a day. That's got to be tough, especially with somebody with a processing delay, right? And you're working with other individuals that don't know that you're a part of this program or what it's about and aren't necessarily there because they have the patience with that. They're also just having a job there. And so she'd come home a lot of those days and talk to me about how like that was frustrating or tough and different ways that we could problem solve. And it just really made me sit and think that like, hey, this person that I thought was essentially nothing and didn't have any thoughts besides the ones that I could see in our life was actually thinking on this monumental level.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been this one that like demoted her to this position that she was never even in. And understanding that I had categorized her as this individual that didn't have the same type of worth that I held another person for was just so disgusting to me. And it was heartbreaking selfishly, even to myself, to realize that I was doing that and that I really did feel like that. And to my core, like that was a strong belief I had. It wasn't just a thought. It wasn't just some silly little thing that went and gone. No, like I really did believe that.
How old were you when you made that realization from like, oh, she's not this inferior piece of flesh to she's a deep thinking human being that just communicates differently?
It was December of 2020. So I was 15 and I was
right before COVID.
Yep.
Because we got sent home a couple months after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you probably had a lot of quality time with her when that hit, right?
Oh boy. Quality is one way to put it. Sure. So then this leads me to my next point is that we all had COVID together. My mom's office was in our kitchen, in our dining room area, which is right outside my bedroom door. Sage is right upstairs.
You spent the COVID months together. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we spent those, like 3-4 months together until like May when I could go out and hang out with like 2 friends.
Yeah.
Me and Sage really bonded. And it's sad to say, but we did bond over annoyance of our mom. But that's pretty normal. And that was really, really, really beneficial for us because as much as she annoyed me and as much as we all didn't want to be in some house together, that's how it was for everybody. And during that time was when I was like, oh, like Sage is fun. Sage is a good time. Like we would have our movie nights together, she would come down to my room, I'd go up to her room, we'd make a little day out of it, we'd go outside, we'd go see like the peeper frogs in our pond in the back when they'd finally come out. And I just started to realize that I didn't need to hate her to fulfill something. I just needed to do something different to handle that anger. And it always comes back to that whenever I think about a problem I have with anybody else. It's just a problem I have with myself. And that was a big one with Sage, is that I have a lot of things to work on, and subconsciously I still find myself, you know, I'm having a bad day. Sage will come home and I'll still snap at her sometimes. I will. And I'm still trying to work on it. And I think that that's one of my biggest things, is that how easily and subconsciously we can, I don't know what the right word is, but give lesser value to another individual without even thinking about it. And I think another thing that really showed me that was this year when I was talking with the director of the RRC, and how that can also happen with coddling in a sense, right? Is that she told me the story this year about how one girl was with a student from the RRC, and they were walking back with them back down to the RRC, and they were holding this kid's hand, and how that kid didn't need his hand held. He didn't even need anybody to show him back to the RRC. He knows exactly where he's going. It's just that you felt like that superiority position, that like,
Yeah.
this is the right thing. Like, I'm doing the right thing for this person right now. Like, I'm helping them. And it's like, yeah.
So the RRC is the Regional Resource Center. That is the program that houses and educates, not houses as in dormitories, but that's where kids come each day for the programs for school. But I think about that a lot as a dad of a single kid. I think that I coddle way too much of this 8-year-old that lives in my house, and that she should have been able to do certain things a long time ago. And because it took more time to teach her to do it than to just do it myself, that's lazy on my end. I think that I have a lot to learn in that regard. So there's many different ways that we can think we're helping people, but if we're helping them too much, or bulldozing the challenge or the obstacle in front of them so they just have a clear, easy path, we're not really helping them.
Yeah.
So what I saw from kind of the outside looking in, Rory, is a girl who was pretty angry and pissed off at the world come 9th grade, and by 11th and 12th grade, striving to help people, particularly people with challenges and needs. And I think what got you into hot water sometimes was your fierce defense of people that you feel were done injustices upon.
Yep.
And navigating your frustration for people that you feel whose actions were not kind, respectful, their comments or whatever, their thought processes is kind of where you had to navigate that challenge of, this person said this comment, this person made this noise, this person acted this way, how am I going to respond? And I think, again, from the outside looking in, sometimes it was, I just need to put them in their place right now, versus I really need to teach them so that they can learn to be better.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, going from, hey, I'm pissed off at the world, to, hey, I'm trying to save the world, and how do I navigate this? And I don't know if that's the right term, trying to save the world, but I'm trying to help the people, I'm trying to help the people in my community do right by the people that need help. I don't know if that's, or maybe that just goes down the coddling path. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think that I just want to be a resource. I just want to be a safe resource that everybody knows has some direction or some way that I can listen. I just want to be a backbone for individuals.
Yeah, and I'm confident that once you move on to this whole new chapter of your life at University of Vermont, that you can find a way to be that. And I'm really, really psyched for you.
Thank you. Me too. I'm pumped.
Yeah. So this question I'm about to ask you, this will be the last one, and then we can sign off. This can have an incredibly long answer, like 6 hours. But I'm curious to know if you could sum it up, if you'd have the ability to articulate and to sum up. So you, for the last bunch of years, have been attending counseling regularly.
Yep.
And you often share with me what your counselor shares with you, or what you're learning through that process. And I would say, through all of your counseling, what has been the biggest takeaway that you've learned that has helped you navigate your struggles? And I guess you could tie into that question, what is a struggle that you're navigating now, and how are you working your way through it? I just threw so much at you.
I know. No, it's okay. I think I've got it. Setting boundaries doesn't mean isolation. And I think the biggest thing I'm working on now is there's a lot of aspects of people I don't like, but that doesn't mean that I can't enjoy other parts of them, right? I think that ties back into my really lonely year, and there's a lot of people I cut off, but that doesn't mean that I don't like every aspect about that individual. That just means there was enough for me to say no, and navigating what that no means, because you do feel alone. And so how can I continue to make that social connection and forge good relationships with individuals without always just necessarily saying no? Hey, let's not do this anymore. And so I really think figuring out how I can mend relationships and work with people and get those parts of the relationships that I still feel have value and are necessary without immediately putting my guard up and saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. It's easier for me to just say, no, let's not at all, than let me be a little bit uncomfortable, but let's learn along the way.
It's awesome. You articulated that very succinctly and eloquent. Nice work.
Thank you.
Before the summer started, Rory was applying for the job where you deliver meals to elderly. Is that what
No. So the nonprofit program is for kids under the age of 18, and it provides either 5-day meal bags once a week to food insufficient or any individuals within the Upper Valley, and then along with a daily basis, daily meals to camps.
That's right. So the exact opposite of the elderly, the very, very
Yep.
young. Yeah,
The
because
young.
well, I listened when
Yep.
we talked about it. Yeah, and her boss called me. Well, what ended up being her boss called me a
Mhm.
couple weeks before school was to end and says, "Hey, Mr. D, Rory Salzano put you as a reference for this job. Here's what the job entails." When I talked to her, for some reason, I processed that you were delivering meals to older people, like Meals on Wheels type thing, but it's
Mhm.
basically Meals on Wheels for kids.
Yep.
And I said to her, "So here's what you need to know. You're going to get a really hard worker. You're going to get an incredibly intelligent human being, but you're going to get a real human being. You're not going to get a yes girl. You're not going to get someone who will not do something she doesn't feel is worth doing. And if you want a robot that's just going to say yes to everything because that's the job, Rory might not be the best fit for you. But if you want someone who's incredibly caring and thought through and will push back if she feels that something is not right, she's the one to hire." And I said, "I don't know what you're looking for, but that's what you need to know about Rory." And then come to find out that you and her had a good connection and the job went great this summer. I think that sums up who you are. I think you are fiercely genuine, and it's not always easy to be that, and navigating that is a challenge. And I admire you so much for that.
Thank you. I think it's a lot easier when you have individuals around you that are like you, where they're not afraid to tell you that, and when you're not afraid to believe it, makes it a lot easier. You know, because I can go, oh no, I'm not that at all. I'm not that at all. No, yeah, I am. I put my work in, so I can say
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. And you'll say that, and you'll also say, "I got a lot to work on."
Oh
And
yeah,
that's what I
yeah,
love about you.
yeah.
And when I was writing your college letter of recommendation, I was like, the kind of the point that I was trying to
Mhm.
drive home to whoever was going to read it was, this is a really genuine human being. And I was thinking, like, I wonder how many of these types of letters they get where the writer is trying to show how genuine the person is. But I was
Mhm.
like running myself rampant
Mhm.
trying to figure out what's the best way to articulate that this kid, age 18, is just chasing what she feels is the right way to live a life, and lots of bumps and bruises along the way, but willing to take accountability for that and continue to learn and move forward. And I think that the single best thing we can do in life is learn and apply, learn and apply, learn and apply,
Always.
learn and apply. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I
awesome.
have you in my brain whenever I mess up, thinking just learn from it. Learn from it.
Yeah. You either win or you learn.
Yeah.
That's it. Because we don't learn much from winning.
No.
And if we look at losses as losses, we're just going to drive ourselves
Mhm.
crazy. So, and I've seen you apply that over the course of, especially the last 2 years. But since that first day I met you, and you're 5 years old, ripping around the gym with your
Thank you.
arms out, acting like a plane.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to include this or not. I don't really care. This is just me talking to you right now. But I also really wanted to tell you to make sure that like the past 4 years, right? You're pausing and like you're just listening to me. Like I know we had this conversation at the end of the year where you're like I've learned that sometimes you need me to just like listen and sit, right? And how I don't always need you to be like, "Oh, let me fix it for you." But like I hope you know that like you do that with other individuals too. Like just because we have a great relationship doesn't mean that I'm not seeing you actively take the time to realize if you need comfort or a solution in that moment. And like I do sit and I see you and I watch you ponder that.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
you saying that. I struggle with that as a parent. So I'm trying to find that line every day. Does she
Yeah.
need me to listen right now, or does she need a solution? And
Mhm.
where I used to err on the side of solution, I'm trying to err on the side of listen
Yeah.
and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
also you said
Thank
something
you.
else. I think your recommendation letter did do good because I never did that supplemental essay for my UVM application and I still got in.
Yeah, you
So I
got,
feel I feel like you
and
hit it with the home run.
you got into like Notre Dame and all these schools, and
I
yeah, it had
know.
nothing to do with the work you put in for 4 years. It was just all about my letter, right?
No, exactly. I really do think that. I read it and I was like, yeah, I'd let her in. Admit immediately.
Well, I do wish you the absolute best as
Thank
you
you.
embark on this next phase. You're going to learn so much. It's going to be challenging. It's going to get tough. And I think you have, I'm fully confident you have the skills and the ability to push through. It's just a matter of making that happen.
Thank
So
you.
awesome, awesome stuff. Thank
Oh,
you so much for taking the time to
yeah.
hang out.
Yeah.
Good
No
stuff.
problem.
To our family of listeners out there, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. If you have any thoughts, feedback, perspectives, ideas for possible or future potential guests, schoolingstruggle@gmail.com. With that said, we do appreciate your ears. We thank you so very much for your time. We are incredibly grateful for your attention. We are the School and Struggle Podcast. We are out.